And this is expected to be an extremely emotional day, and one that is bringing a very unusual legal situation for us. Normally, here in New York State, we are not allowed to have video cameras live in the courtroom. But today, we are going to have them here in the courtroom. They are going to be recording the statements of each of these 10 family members. But what they will not be coming out live. We are going to get them after these proceedings have wrapped up. We'll be able to share those with you. But I want to bring in somebody this morning that we are very excited to have here as part of the broadcast, and that would be Rodney Harrison. He is the man who is extremely instrumental and pivotal, really, in bringing this case to bear finally. Rodney, it is an absolute honor to have you with us this morning, going through this and taking viewers through not only what's happening this process here, but how this all came to be. You were the police chief in Suffolk County. That I when I talk to friends and colleagues about this, I say you single-handedly came in and just blew this case open. You were a force of nature. You came in and you said, I am going to solve this. I remember hearing that, I believe, one of the first times we saw you when you stood up after you were appointed Suffolk County Police Commissioner. You knew in your heart and your soul that you wanted to get it done and you would get it done. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you for the kind words, but I also want to just make sure that this is crystal clear that I didn't single-handedly do this. This was a team effort from a bunch of different law enforcement agencies in Suffolk County that were able
Right.
to bring Rex Heuermann to justice. And I will continue to make sure that the right people are acknowledged. And one of them is Kevin Byrer, who was the detective lieutenant in charge of the homicide squad at the time, and the great work that he did leading the task force that got us to this day.
It was just such an incredible effort, and you digitized all the records. You brought together multiple agencies, from the FBI to the Suffolk County Police to Suffolk County Sheriff's Office. Help me give accolades to the other branches of law enforcement that participated in this.
Yeah, so state police, FBI,
Right.
the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office. I mean, those were, and as well as the Suffolk County Police Department, of
Right.
course. But just putting, and that's just kind of like the blueprint, something that I learned during my time frame in the NYPD. The more investigators from different agencies working together, the better chance you're going to be able to address either a criminal element, enterprise, or a serial killer case. And that was my mindset coming into the transition of being a police commissioner. How can I get everybody involved? How can I get a partnership with everyone to make sure that we get this case going in the right direction?
And I know that you spent 30 years with the NYPD. You truly rose through the ranks from a cadet that came out of South Jamaica, Queens, and rising through the ranks as an officer and as a detective. And then you held several significant positions as a commanding officer in Harlem, the chief of patrol, the chief of detectives, first black person ever put into the chief of detectives position in 2019, to the chief of department, which is the highest ranking uniform position. You knew how to not only work a crime scene, but you also knew how to work collaboratively within the men and women who are part of the uniformed services. You knew how to bring people together. They're just starting the proceedings now inside Judge Timothy Massey's courtroom. And this is going to take a while, and it's going to move a little slowly at times, but we'll continue to bring information into the space as we get it. But you really knew how to collaborate and bring people together. I think it was so frustrating for everybody following these serial murders how the FBI wasn't brought in. They were blocked. They were specifically blocked by the Suffolk County police commissioner at the time, who wanted to make sure that the nefarious operations that he was overseeing, sort of the nefarious doings that was going on inside Suffolk County, were not uncovered by the FBI.
Yeah, so go back.
Yeah.
I went NYPD University is what I call it. You know, anytime you do over 20 years in the biggest police department in the country, you're going to know how to solve any types of crime or deal with any type of condition when it comes to criminal activity and serial killer cases and homicides and other sexual assaults out there that unfortunately plagues that municipality.
Sure.
And when I was able to come out to Suffolk County and make sure we had these partnerships, the FBI was one of the agencies that I thought would be extremely instrumental, and they were. We had a little bit of difficulty getting them on board because of previous relationships that they had, but I reassured them that there's going to be a new way of partnership and working together. And they didn't trust me at first, but once I showed that there's going to be a team effort here, they
Right.
brought into it, and they really brought a lot to the table in the investigation.
You know, you brought transparency and you digitized all the records so that everybody could have access to the information. And then you very quickly, I believe when I read back over my notes on this case, within 6 weeks, you had identified Heuermann from the point in time when you said you were going to start this task force, which was pretty early in your tenure. It was one of the first big things I remember you talking about at the time.
Yeah, so it was really one of the investigators from the state police who was going through the case file, saw something there that was something that she thought that was very important. It
The
happened to
Amber
be one of the
Costello's roommate
Amber
identifying the
Costello.
car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. And the database that the state police had, that this investigator had, the Suffolk County Police Department did not have. And
Right.
listen, could they have done a better job or effort in regards to reaching out to the state police and seeing if there is a green avalanche that happens to be in one of the cell site areas that came back during the earlier parts of the investigation? Absolutely. But putting them all in a room, making them work all together,
Right.
everybody sharing ideas, I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a game changer in the investigation.
Yeah, we're no longer working in a silo here. We're going to collaborate. You know how to be a team leader. You did it from the precinct level all the way to the chief of department. You got to make people work together, even if they have differences in personalities and opinion. I found it so notable. Also, I believe it was Amber Costello's roommate who described Heuermann, and she said he was like a big hulking guy. And when you compare who owns green Chevy Avalanches, which is a really signature vehicle. You know, thank God it
Yeah.
wasn't like a Ford Taurus, but owns a green Chevy Avalanche and then fits that physical profile, you know, by registered owners and driver's licenses. You guys must have sat back. I would have loved to have been in the room where that happened, to have heard people say, my God, this has been here in front of our faces for more than a dozen years.
Yeah, so the description was an over,
Yeah,
actually. He was about 6'4". He had
right.
bushy hair, big, human being. And one of the things that I'm not sure if you're aware about this, but Amber Costello's roommates were known to rob some of her clients. They chose not to rob this individual because of his stature, but
Ah,
they were able
very
to.
interesting.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes, ma'am. And
really
and one
interesting.
of the things they saw once that he left, he jumped into a green avalanche. So this is evidence.
This is basic policing, and I want to get
Uh,
deeper into this, but I also want to bring in James Ford. He's our correspondent who's at the courthouse in Riverhead, and we have the list of families that are choosing to speak today. Valerie Mack is a mother, and she is a victim of Rex Heuermann. She has 4 family members that are choosing to speak on her behalf because she can no longer speak. And they are going to give what's known as a victim impact statement. James, what can you tell us from the courthouse?
What we can tell you from the courthouse is this is happening here up on the 4th floor in Judge Maisie's chambers. It has begun. And yes, as you are saying, we're starting to hear the first of the victim impact statements. In this case, coming from Valerie Mack's family. Now, what we can also tell you is that each personal impact statement is allowed to be up to 10 minutes. And when we got 13 people scheduled to have their statements read, this is going to be a fairly long affair. And it very well should be, because these families really have been through hell. And they have told us that at various points throughout this whole proceeding over the years. It's also worth pointing this out. You can see right behind me here the microphones there. Yes, it is really important for these families to have their say in court, have it be made part of the official record as part of the written history of this case. But they also, we're expecting some of them to come out here after this sentencing hearing is done and talk with us about this. In fact, what they want to do is tell you about this situation. In fact, Tony Mazza, behind our camera here, if you go over, you can see, look, we've got media here from all over the world. And that is the impact that these families want to have. These victim impact statements certainly are emotional. They want the world to know just what kind of loss they have had with their loved ones having been murdered by Rex Heuermann. We're just still in the first of the 13 impact statements. We can tell you this too. It has been emotional. We were here for when Heuermann pled guilty to the 8 murders, and certainly that was an emotional day. And on this day, when those families get to talk about how affected they have been, count on the emotions being really, really deep. So far, Valerie Mack's mother has said that all of the victims are immortal and that she is hoping to see her daughter again in heaven, in the afterlife, and that is just the beginning. You can expect a lot more like that to be heard in the courtroom and out here. We're standing by, and we'll be here certainly reporting right up to the minute, as always. Kirsten.
And, James, it was very notable as I went through all of the victims, the 8 women who were murdered by Rex Heuermann. 5 of them were mothers. These were all young women. They were in their 20s. They were sex workers. And 3 of their children are choosing to speak today. Valerie Mack's family is up first right now. As you've just spoken, her mom is speaking. This is notable. It was her adoptive parents, her father, Ed, her mother, Joanne, her sister, Danielle, her adoptive family, the family that wanted her the most. And her son, Benjamin Aaron Torres, is also going to speak. He's one of 3 children that is on the lineup today to speak about the loss of their mother. These were young children. And I, as parents here in the room right now, as we're covering this, we can't imagine this horror from either end. But as a child, to have to get up and talk about maybe the few precious memories you might have of your mother. These were women who struggled when they were, pursuing the line of sex work. This is not a first stop for many women. And it is an incredible time when their humanity can finally be revealed. And they're not just victims of a serial killer, but they're being remembered by the people who, loved them the most. One of the things that struck me when I was covering this, and James, like you, we've both been in the business of being journalists, and Rodney, you've been in the business of law enforcement for 3 decades. And I remember reading an account of Police Commissioner James Burke at the time talking about when they had found another body. And he said, "Don't come to me with another story of a hooker that's been found buried." He didn't want to hear it. He dehumanized these women. He didn't want to know about them. He didn't want them to in any way ruin what he had in Suffolk County, what he was controlling in that county. And it is a real triumph to see this at long last come to completion with the victims' families having their time to speak. And James, go ahead and give us your your thoughts and your impressions from being there. I know it's a
Sure.
very it's a weighty matter that we're all experiencing.
Absolutely, Kirsten. As you may know, our Long Island Bureau Chief, Keith Lopez, is in the courtroom and has been updating us on some of what has been going on. You make a very good point. Some of these children were very young when their mothers went missing. They are now adults, and some of them really have been advocates for their lost mothers. And part of that has been being relentless with law enforcement to ensure that this prosecution happen and that Rex Heuermann be sentenced to the fullest extent of the law. You also did mention James Burke and him playing down the fact that these were sex workers. That's a very good point that was addressed out here outside of court earlier this morning. Also in the courtroom, some sex workers who are here to advocate for the victims. What they are saying specifically is they don't want Rex Heuermann to be called a client. They're saying he should specifically be called a murderer and a murderer only. They say that's because he sought out these sex workers specifically to kill them, not to be involved necessarily in the sex work and the sex activity. They're saying they want to be treated with respect as sex workers and say that these 8 women who were killed need to be treated with respect for having been involved in the sex work industry. Also, as you'd mentioned, Kirsten, a number of these women had turned to sex work out of desperation. In fact, in at least one of the cases, a victim had been threatened with eviction. And in order to make ends meet, she decided, look, I've got to make money somehow. I don't want me and my daughter to be put out on the street and evicted. So that was the choice she made. And Heuermann took advantage of that. He would post on Craigslist asking for sex workers who wanted to maximize the payments they got based really on their desperation. So he exploited that and has been open in court admitting to that regarding luring them and then killing them. It's completely tragic, and it's being addressed in the courtroom right now in these victim impact statements. One other point about that. The statements, yes, it's helpful for families to read them aloud. In this case, though, it's really worth pointing out, Rex Heuermann's right there. These statements are being read right to him. And from what we are seeing so far from some of the content of these statements, they are looking at him, addressing him, looking him in the eye, and saying, you caused the pain that our families have felt. And they are shaming him, and they are claiming strength in the name of the women that he has confessed to killing. Very emotional stuff, really intense in the courtroom there. And again, we'll hear more of that intensity and emotion when the various family members come out after the sentencing hearing is finished and address us, address you, address the public, address the world out here.
Yeah, this is going to unfold in several levels. I want to take a moment to just reset and bring in all of our guests now. I'm Kirsten Cole, your host. With me here in studio is Dante Mills, a criminal defense attorney. We also have via live link Rodney Harrison, who is the former Suffolk County Police Commissioner, who is the one who was on duty and reinvigorated this investigation, brought it back to life. James Ford, our reporter in the field. Somebody that you can't see is Keith Lopez, who is our Long Island Bureau Chief, who's actually in the courtroom this morning, Judge Timothy Mazzei's courtroom, where Rex Heuermann is, along with all of the victims' family members who are speaking today. This is very notable. We are recording their statements, but we are not broadcasting them live. This is because this is the court's parameters that they're putting up. It's unusual to have video cameras in the courtroom in New York State. This is going to be incredibly powerful, and I commend Judge Mazzei for allowing this to happen, because I feel like it gives so much strength and voice to the victims in this case, instead of all of the power to Rex Heuermann, which is what a serial killer want. I feel like this allows us to sort of take that power back a little bit. And I want to say thank you to Dante Mills for coming in this morning. I appreciate having you here. Just very briefly, give us your impressions of having 10 family members get up and address a perpetrator, somebody who has admitted to these killings. Tell us how this plays out in the courtroom and the impact of that.
It's vitally important. I deal with, as a criminal defense attorney, I deal with cases all the time where sentencing happens and you hear victim impact statements. It really does make a difference. But I think this case being on a national stage, it's more important.
International stage.
International stage. Yes, people are watching and trying to understand the why.
Right.
It's more important. And I think this point was just made, but I want to reinforce it that especially when you deal with serial killers, what they tend to do is dehumanize a group to justify their actions. What they try to do is make one group of people worse than they are so they can justify why they're committing these horrific acts. Rex Heuermann did that with female sex workers. And he decided that that profession was lower than him as a person, so he could essentially do whatever he wants to do. I think having the families of these people speak out and really humanize them, bring them back to life and say, no, they were more even than their occupation. Now, listen, everybody makes choices and sometimes people do things that they have to do because they have no other options. But no matter what, we're all still humans. And I think hearing these families get up and say, this was my mom, this was my aunt, this was my sister,
my daughter.
This is my daughter, and this is who she was even outside of that, I think it could go a long way just internationally, as we're talking about, with the way that people see anyone, even females in that industry, right? Saying they still everyone still has value, no matter what your occupation is, no matter who you are. Absolutely. No one has the right to take your life away because they feel they're better than you. So I applaud the judge. You're absolutely right. In New York, video cameras in
courtrooms.
Courtrooms are very rare. It's generally not allowed, but for the judge to let the audio be in there so we can hear the pain will make a difference. It's much different than reading a transcript or hearing even a reporter, report back and say, this is what was said in the courtroom. So I applaud the judge for doing this, and I know it will make a difference.
I do want to share, because we've got our bureau chief Keith Lopez in the room, in the courtroom, and I want to share some of what has been said by Valerie Mack's family. They're the first ones to come up. Her parents, Ed and Joanne, who were adoptive parents, Danielle, her sister, and her son, Benjamin Torres. And some of what has said, and you're just going to have to bear with me because I'm reading notes here as it comes across, but that, first of all, Joanne is a very religious woman. She says, you can't bring beloved Valerie back to earth. Even though you were able to commit atrocities against my daughter, you never touched her soul. The saddest to bear, you took away every chance she ever had these past 26 years to attain the goals that she had set for herself. You took away a lifetime from her son, from her mother, her sister Danielle, saying that Valerie had a fire inside her. She was strong, protective, funny, beautiful inside and out, and that Rex Heuermann lit a fire inside all of us that can never be put out. Her son Benjamin was the next to speak and said that the amount of pain is insurmountable. He is one of 7 children of these women who lost their mothers, so much that words cannot properly convey. You will reap what you have sown. No one escapes from that. Next was Jessica Taylor's cousin, Jasmine Robinson. She said she couldn't wrap her head around the word torso, headless and handless. It's monstrous and brutal. And she pointed out that they never even found all of her cousin. The weekend that she was supposed to come home, she never picked up her phone. It was sick and twisted and heartless. And Jasmine saying her heart sinks low for those who have not been found, that pain is immeasurable decades later. Her presence is still very much missed. I mean, these are just difficult words to hear and to read.
From people who mattered, right? And he didn't think they did. Hopefully, he understands that after hearing this, and he is tortured for the rest of his life.
I don't know if it's possible. I mean, this brings up something very interesting, and I'd like to bring Rodney Harrison in at this moment because part of what Rex Heuermann has agreed to do is work with the FBI Criminal Profiling Unit. Talk about that and the value
Oh, really?
of that. And James, just so you know, your microphone is open as well.
Yeah, well, so if you ask me, I think Rex Heuermann's a fraud. Him looking to partner with the FBI, I think, was part of the plea deal, which kind of helped him not to be exposed with a lot of the disgusting things that he was a part of. Is he going to change his ways and his views and cooperate with the FBI and open up his mind to why he did these horrible and horrific things? Possibly. But I don't believe anything that man says. I hope he rots in jail. Hopefully the judge will make sure this is consecutive sentencing and he'll never be able to hurt somebody in the public ever again.
Do you think at the end of the day he's a coward, that he didn't want to face all of this coming out and having his family, his wife, his two children hear about all of these atrocities, and so that it would sort of strip him down to just the grossest parts of himself, and so that he would be seen as subhuman?
Not only is he a coward, for him or for people around him to say that he did not want to go to trial in the protection of the family members of the survivors is total nonsense to me. I think the only reason why he did take the plea because he wanted to protect his family from the embarrassing, disgusting things that he was a part of.
And he's also protecting them monetarily. His wife, Asa Ellerup, very quickly started her divorce proceedings, and this is a big contentious part of what's going forward because there's been a civil lawsuit filed on behalf of some of the victims. By not going through the trial, it doesn't spend down the assets that they have, because when you have to mount a defense trial in a multiple murder case like these, it is incredibly expensive.
Yeah, so the monetary value that the family is getting, once again, another thing that disgusts me. Listen, I still to this day am not sure if they were complicit or if they had any knowledge in regards to exactly what their father or husband was doing. I
Especially
know
since we
that.
know that some of the murders, at least some of them, were committed inside the family home, because they found um, one of Asa's hairs on the burlap, in addition to finding Rex Heuermann's hair. And there were other pieces of evidence as well in the home that he committed those murders inside in the
Yeah,
basement.
yeah, and there was evidence there. I'm not even sure if I can provide confirmation or speak with a level of conviction to say that the murders occurred in the house. Uh, that's something that I think he shared privately with his family, but never said it publicly to the attorneys. But we'll see what happens when he's engaged with the FBI and if he's willing to cooperate and talk about, why and what and how he did these horrible acts of violence.
Rodney's absolutely right when he talks about the selfishness and the decision not to go to trial. And I do think the bulk of that was centered around trying to keep finances with his family,
Right.
trying to protect his family. It had nothing to do with the victims. But I will just offer a different perspective in regards to what he gave up, or what he's doing in exchange for that, which is sitting down with the FBI. I do think there's value there. He's going to go in there as that selfish person, thinking he's the smartest person in the room and he can even
Right.
outsmart them.
Of course.
I just don't think that's true. I think they will be able to extract some valuable information from him about what he thought, why he was thinking that, how he thought when he planned these murders, what steps he was taking. Though that can save another life in the future, it may allow them to create this map so they know what to look for in future serial killers where they can probably catch them sooner. So they can get some benefit from him sitting down with the FBI because they are going to be able to get some information out of him. He's not going to be able to outsmart them and hide the ball or play these games. They're going to get information from him that hopefully will save a life in the future. Rex Heuermann is going to be in jail for the rest of his life no matter what.
Right.
So if you can get some benefit from that, I do think that situation is worth it.
And Rodney, also talk about what he gets by way of accommodations as far as where he's going to stay in federal law or where he's going to stay in lockup in the prison system. When he's working with federal agents, does this get him better treatment inside? Does he get, a cushier cell? Does he get better food? What happens when you're working with the FBI?
Yeah, and there is an opportunity and a chance for some of his services to be in a better place while you're in protective custody, we'll say. But I kind of want to go back to my earlier statements. Of course, the FBI should definitely get a FBI profile on Rex Heuermann. Of course, they should engage him and find out what made him be so sick-minded, and also possibly help out investigations down the road where there may be, God willing, there's never another serial killer case, but just say hypothetically there is one, maybe the engagement in the interview with Rex Heuermann can help out that investigation. So it's very, very important that this process is done. And if they have to make the accommodations a little bit easier for him versus everybody else that's in maximum security, then so be it. I will also say that this is a very important turning point regarding investigations. You're dealing with an individual who right now has shown no sign of remorse, has lied since day one of his apprehension, smirked inside the courtroom while the judge was engaging him. So I do have some concerns about who he is as a human being. Can information be extracted? Absolutely. You're going to have the best of the best from the Bureau of Investigations looking into Rex Heuermann. But I do have some concerns. Is he think that he's going to be able to outsmart the investigators and use this as an availability to get some perks while he's in the penitentiary?
I can see how you're a little at odds here with this, because while you want Rex Heuermann to be locked up and the key to be thrown away after all of the atrocities that he committed, and you, unfortunately, we thank you for your service, but you had a front row seat to this horror. You saw things that most of us never have to see. You read in on things that most of us never have to deal with. And I am so eternally grateful that it lit a fire in you, and you wanted to go in, and you knew you could get this solved, and you could create the systems and the collaboration with the terrific law enforcement agencies to pull this together. And yet you realize he's going to get sort of special treatment in some way because he's in possession of this knowledge set, right? Because he is this horrible creature, and now he is going to get almost I hate to say it, a reward for being able to share that information.
I'm sorry, I got to jump in. Families have been torn apart.
Yeah.
There are survivors out there that will never, ever be able to recover from this situation.
Right.
There is absolutely no way that he should be able to get any type of accommodations because he's cooperating. And you use the phrase, listen, take the key and throw it away. Let him spend the rest of his time in hell, in whatever penitentiary that they're going to send him to. And listen, I unfortunately, doing 30 years in law enforcement, seeing victims during my time frame, I understand the frustrations. I've seen it happen over and over again where families have gone through such difficult times, and meanwhile, the individual that has destroyed their family finds a little bit of a nugget of breath of fresh air. I don't want to see that happen to Rex Heuermann.
I think this is a good time now, if I can just jump in and say even to Rodney, you are a hero. I mean, these families have answers in part because of the work you did. and you should be applauded for that. I know it's a lot of times it's a selfless work, but it makes a difference. And not only in this particular case with so many victims, the impact statements that we're hearing today, they have the opportunity to do that because you decided that this was important enough and these victims were important enough to find out what happened to them. So this is a big day for a lot of people here. I think it shows the benefit of having wonderful people, investigators, officers, detectives, made the decision to dedicate their lives to bringing justice to people, should be applauded for that. Today is a day that marks just a victory because someone who took lives will face justice. It will be brought to justice and will be in prison for the rest of their life. They won't be able to hurt anyone else. And we don't know if there were other victims, if he was still on the streets today, if there would be more victims. So a thank you is in order. And we truly appreciate the service, not only for this case, but even if you look at legally, because of this case now in court, you can bring evidence of hair DNA, right? That's something that happened specifically because of this case.
Hugely groundbreaking. So, Rodney, you were leading the charge, and once you, within 6 weeks, identified who you thought it was, you needed to get some DNA to match up with the DNA that you already had, which was degraded. I mean, we're talking about this went back 30 years. This was a long time coming.
And kudos to the investigators who collected that hair, didn't know what to do with it, but they stored it. They preserved it, absolutely.
Preserved it. And then to combine it with DNA that you did not have to have a court order. You didn't have to tip your hand and show him that you were right there on his doorstep and you could continue to collect evidence, getting the infamous pizza crust. Talk about pulling all of that together and the new DNA analysis that you had brought through the court system, which was eventually allowed.
Yeah, so if I could just go back for one second. Once we identified that Rex Heuermann was somebody that was engaging with Amber Costello, we didn't go right to getting DNA. We had to find out more about Rex Heuermann. Who was he? What was he about? What was his lifestyle? He was a father. He was a husband. He had a decent job. He was an architect or a building inspector. So the key thing was this. We didn't go right to, hey, we identified Rex Heuermann, let's go get his DNA. We had to build a case. We had to do an investigation. We had to see what he was about. And that's when we started doing
police work,
internet
because
search.
You didn't want that undone by the courts. You could not make a mistake.
And yes, and I have to make sure that I compliment Ray Turney, because once we started getting more and more evidence and started seeing what Rex Heuermann was about, he started putting things in place for the judicial process. And that's why you have a task force and a team of law enforcement officials working together. So between the state police taking a look at doing their database and being able to track that green avalanche at Massapequa Park, between the FBI helping out with the surveillance and putting up certain levels of technology around Rex Heuermann, between Ray Turney that was able to say, hey, listen, these are the things that I'm going to need to further the judicial process. And then with the men and women from the Suffolk County Police Department really being the quarterback and putting everything together allowed this situation to happen today.
I mean, the collaboration that you brought to bear was just so textbook and so well executed. And it really comes out of your 30-year career with the NYPD. You were used to being a cop on the street, a detective. You were used to leading people at the precinct level. As chief of detectives, chief of department, you knew how to get it done. And you brought together the incredible resources that were at your access, including that of the FBI, in order to make your case and make it stick. Today's a big day for you.
And you talk about the importance of that. The other big case that's happening today is Luigi Mangione, right? In that case, some of the evidence was thrown out because of the investigation. right? And that's a big thing. The investigation wasn't done the right way. They went in, searched his book bag. They didn't have the warrant to do so. Again, I think the department here needs to be applauded by the way they handled this to make sure that the investigation that they did was thorough. The evidence that they recovered, they would be able to use in trial. Because yes, DNA was huge, and that was a part of the reason why Rex Heuermann decided to take this plea. Imagine if that DNA wasn't able to be used because they skipped a step in the investigation.
Right.
That would have been out. We still may not have justice here today. So it's a combination of wanting to do the work and doing it the right way.
Yeah, we're hearing from 13 of these family members today who are going to speak on behalf of those that can no longer speak, and that is the 8 victims. One of them was Violet Swagger. We're getting basically the notes from their statements as they're coming through from the courtroom. I want to share this with you. Violet is a cousin of Jessica Taylor, and her statement was so lovely, saying she was fierce and beautiful, pure as sunshine. I wished I could have hugged her tighter the last time I saw her. If I could say something, you thought you took her voice, you hunted her, and we hunted you. You made a planning document, and you were sloppy. You couldn't even do that right. You would want to be around. You thought that the FBI was wasting their time. And she's taunting him. She's saying, you are a nobody. She says that her cousin Jessica saw Rex as the huge freak that you are. You chose a small woman because you are weak and disgusting and a coward. You want to play God now. You will have to face God now. Today is Jessica's 43rd birthday.
Wow.
It's touching and emotional. And I just hope that something
if I may
pierces
jump
to
in,
him.
Please go ahead, James.
Yeah, if I may jump in for a moment. In fact, I think you're doing an excellent job, Kirsten, everyone is, of conveying the emotion. I could certainly hear at various points in your talking and relaying some of the content that the victims' family members are saying, getting emotional yourself. And we certainly can't blame you. That's the kind of sense that we're getting from the courtroom right now. Great emotion. And in fact, yes, Dante, I have to agree with you. If it weren't for really, really fine-tuned and professional police
Have
work
we lost James?
that Rodney Harrison
We may have lost James's
shepherded,
microphone.
we would not.
Can we confirm that? Is he good?
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear him.
Do you hear me now?
Okay, James, we're going to work on some audio issues here. Always appreciate all of your insights, especially since you're right there on the front line. But we want to continue to share what we have as this is coming in. And just as a little bit of a reset so that our viewers know as they're joining us, we're here with Rodney Harrison, who is the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, who had started the task force that eventually found the serial killer Rex Heuermann. We also have with us Dante Mills, who's a criminal defense attorney. James Ford, one of our correspondents here at Pix 11 News. Who you cannot see is Keith Lopez. He's inside Judge Timothy Mazzei's courtroom right now, and he is relaying to us the victims' impact statements as they are being read by the family members. This is notable because they're being video and voice recorded as well. We will be able to share them with you during our later broadcasts today, but this is highly unusual to have cameras in the courtroom like this to record this. But Judge Mazzei has ruled that it is important. And I believe if I can read between the lines here as a journalist, because he hasn't said this, but I believe that what this is doing is giving greater weight and value to the victims in this case, greater than the perpetrator of their murders. And one by one, we are hearing from them. 4 family members of Valerie Mack have spoken today, including her son. 2 family members of Jessica Taylor have spoken, her 2 cousins. We now have Melissa Can, who is speaking. She is, just give me a moment as I look through my notes here. She is the sister of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, who is also a mother. Her daughter, Nicolette, is going to be speaking. I'm going to share with you now some of what Melissa is saying, the sister of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. She said, I kept telling myself that she would call, but days turned into years. She was a victim of a predator. This was a calculated act. The pain is unbearable. She has lived with survivor's guilt for a decade, played it over and over in her mind. What if I had done something different? Would she have been here? I convinced myself this was my fault. The kill is not mine to carry. This burden belongs with Rex. You know, we don't think about these things, that family members are, of course, blaming themselves.
Of course. You say, what could I have done different, right?
How could I have intervened? Yeah. She said Maureen was a rare soul. She was there for me every chapter. She was there when I awoke from a coma. Her daughter was born when she was there. I mean, these stories are just unbelievable and so poignant. It's just incredible. Just incredible to hear these. We are hearing from the family members of most of the victims today. I wanted to go through. There are 8 victims in total that Rex Heuermann has pleaded guilty to, has admitted that he has killed, including one whose murder that he was not charged with. But he did, the 7 of them were tied to him through the policing work of the Suffolk County Police Department, as well as many other agencies. But what we're hearing today is the impacts from the victims. And this is something Dante Mills, as a criminal defense attorney, you hear these in the courtroom. It doesn't change anything. His sentence isn't going to change. He's going to get these 3 consecutive life sentences. Why is this such a vital part of the process?
Because you want everyone to have their day in court. You want everyone to have the opportunity to express the impact of a crime. There's a lot of things that go into the criminal justice system, and even when you talk about punishing someone, you want to punish them for deterrence, right? You don't want people to do that again. But
I don't know that we could ever deter a serial killer, though.
Well, you would hope, right? I mean, again, serial killers by nature dehumanize a group and think that they are not worth living. When you do something like this, there could be this group that now people see we're all just humans, right? We all have a story. We all have families. We all make decisions, but we all deserve our own place, right? And grace. So when you have these kind of stories, you do hope that someone hears this and says, you know what? I thought that this person was worthless, but now I understand that we're all human. We all have problems. We all have we all have things that's good about us and everything else. So maybe this will deter someone. But part of the punishing process is giving the victim in the case of their families, when there's a death, the opportunity to really say what the impact was, what the loss was, and having the opportunity to express that in a courtroom where it feels official, I think makes a difference for these families. And it will shift the burden a bit because, like you just said, Kirsten, a lot of them walk away from a death thinking, what role did I play in this? Why didn't I intervene sooner? Why didn't I help her a little bit more? Why didn't I have another conversation or hug her tighter the last time I saw her? Tell her I love her the last time I saw her. Those are the lasting impressions that they have. But you have the opportunity now to go into a courtroom, speak directly to the person who took their life and say, no, you are the bad guy. You are the reason they're dead, not me.
Not me.
Not me.
This is right.
And that's very powerful when you can look at them and say, the blame now, I'm giving it to you because you deserve it. And that lifts the burden off of them and those families. And I think it's important in this process.
And I also think it's important because part of the roadblocking to discovering these murders and working the policing aspect of it was the Suffolk County Police Chief at the time, James Burke. And he very much did not want to hear about. He was specifically quoted saying this, don't tell me about another dead hooker that's buried on the beach. I don't want to hear about it. He didn't even want to hear about these victims. And so you wonder if when Amber Costello's roommate, when that roommate was interviewed and told police at the time, described the car that came and picked her up, described the ogre-like man that was the one that came to take her for the night. Had the policing been better at the time, what would have happened? Who could have survived?
How interesting is that? Because you just said maybe you can't deter a serial killer, right? But maybe you can encourage an investigator to
Right.
think that they're valuable enough to
Yes.
investigate something that's happened to them.
Do more.
Yes.
Do more. I mean, it is so incredibly admirable that Rodney Harrison came in on his white horse and said, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to use every resource there is. And there are a lot of them. Taxpayers paying a lot of money for the FBI and all of these police departments. And we're going to gather up all the evidence, and there's a lot, and we're going to find this killer. Rodney, can you just please jump in here and tell me a little bit more about sort of how you were perceived and received by those that were still there in the police department when you got there? Because, of course, this is playing out 30 years later. So a lot of people had retired and were not even on the job.
Yeah, so there's a couple things here. And first and foremost, the arrogance and the egos did have a way of ruining the investigation and causing it to two things, be stalled as well as put in the back burner. I actually often think, because of the profession that these victims were in, is that the reason why it wasn't prioritized? I don't have anything of substance to share that type of response, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And listen, in law enforcement and investigations, you're going to deal with egos. This is not just a Suffolk County thing. This is investigators anywhere across the country. A lot of time, and me being a former detective and a sergeant of detectives and a borough investigator of detectives, I've seen it where I don't need any help. I know how to control this. I know how to make sure that the investigation is done. I think this is what happened in Suffolk County. And so when I first sat down with the detective lieutenant from Suffolk County, his name is Kevin Byer, I shared his name earlier, he was very well aware of the investigation. He knew the case cold. He was living the case. The problem here is they did not necessarily surround the investigation with the appropriate amount of workers that made it a dedicated investigation. And when we started having the task force between myself, Ray Tierney, and other leaders from other departments, Kevin Catalina, who is now the police commissioner, was over in the sheriff's office, we would have weekly meetings. And these weekly meetings, we made sure we held them accountable to make sure there was progress. All right, what did you say you were going to do last week? And did you do it this week? Hey, what are you going to look to do next week regarding certain steps into the investigation? And there was a lot of things that we saw based upon that initial engagement or interview that I conducted. A lot of work needed to be done.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that I reassured everybody, hey, well, listen, we're going to go forward. Everybody's going to leave their egos at the door, and we're going to make sure we are working together.
If
And
I can just jump in and ask Rodney,
we're the new team. Like, I understand that there were old teams here, that there were prior leaders, that there were things that weren't done, but we are the new team. You've got to be the coach.
if I can just ask Rodney, I know that when you're looking at these investigations and you have these call sheets where you say, here's what we're going to put our resources to, we know resources are not unlimited. Was it a difficult process to have resources allotted to this specific investigation? Most importantly, because it was cold, right? It wasn't like there were a lot of active things going on. It was a little bit older. We know the demographic of victims and the impact that had on some of the early investigators. Was it difficult to get those resources assigned to this case so that you could put that time in, have weekly meetings, do those things that you needed to do?
Well, it was a lot harder than I would have anticipated, and then I'll share this with you. If you're the police commissioner in New York City Police Department, whatever you say is gospel. Everybody moves, everybody gets in line, and they update you and surround themselves regarding whatever you say. In Suffolk County, it wasn't necessarily the same case, and there was a little bit of dragging their feet. There was a little bit of slow motion. There was a little bit of, hey, I'll get back to you. And then because I've had that experience of challenging, of investigative experience where things that I've seen in New York City that did not or did work, I made sure that we implemented those strategies out in Suffolk County. You know, one of the things that I'll share with you real quickly is anytime you put investigators in a certain office, they have to work with other individuals, they're outcasted. One of the things that I put in place was we're going to give them a separate office where you're not going to be outcasted, where the only people assigned to this investigation are going to be investigators inside the task force versus what they used to do, the FBI, was they would go inside the office of the homicide squad and be told, hey, go sit over there. We'll get to you in a second. That was some of the difficulties that the FBI and other people had to deal with, was sometimes the arrogance. And then when you have Jimmy Burke talking about, we don't need the FBI, it was just a recipe for the case to be stalled.
The other thing that I want to do right now, we so appreciate your insights, Rodney, because I have wanted to dig deeper into this case, and I so appreciate hearing how this got done, how this got solved, how you pulled together all of the forces to bear. We also are here today because we are hearing from the victims in the courtroom. This is a very unusual setup that we have going on, that they are being recorded, but they are not being live streamed. We are going to get them later. Part of that reason is we don't know exactly what is going to be said. We want to be able to control that. There have been some things that are even a little bit too intense for us to share with you here on the air. I do want to read to you, though, the statement from another one of the children of these victims, and that's Nicolette Brainerd Barnes. Her mother is Maureen, and she was one of the victims of Rex Heuermann. Specifically, she was his fourth victim during his times of serial killing. And this is what she said. Today, I am 2 years older than my mother was. I've experienced PTSD I will never relax. I was 7 when I lost my mom. For 3 years, she was missing. I need and needed my mom, still need her. My life has been altered by the loss. Her death created a lifetime of grief. I am shaped by my mom's absence as much as her presence for 7 years. The district attorney kept her memory, not a headline or a statistic, nor the circumstance of her death. When Rex took her, he took a mother, an aunt, a friend. These victims were vibrant women, but they are all more than an example. He will never be a permanent absence. My mother's life had meaning. He will be remembered by destruction. He is the least important person of this story. You're a pathetic man that thinks he is better than women. You can't understand love. And Rodney, this goes to what you talked about that you found so just awful when you saw him in the courtroom. Seeing you smirk during the plea proves you need to be locked away. You make me sick, and I don't forgive you. They are giving words to the feelings that so many of us have felt sitting on the sidelines watching this unfold. It's just been an incredible day so far, and we've only heard from 8 so far of these family members. James, what can you tell us from where you are at the Riverhead Courthouse?
Oh, yes. And I can say the emotion that I hear in your voice, Kirsten, really helps to sum up the effect that hearing from these victims has. That is a full courtroom up on the 4th floor, and there's also an overflow courtroom, which is also standing room only. Yet that many people want to hear from the victims in real time And the emotion from what we are gathering is extremely intense. It's well worth noting that the sister of Melissa Bartholomew also spoke, and her words very, very strong. As you had mentioned, a few things can't be repeated on the air per se, but it's a very, very impactful statement. In fact, she talks about the fact that, remember, after her sister went missing, she, the sister, Amanda Funderburg, got a call from a burner phone, and that phone on the other end was Rex Heuermann. So she has actually spoken with him and referenced that to him, to his face in the courtroom, saying, "You can look at me when I'm talking. It's been 17 years since we last spoke. I hope you have a very short-lived life." And he did face her. And a variety of the family members are saying that when he pled guilty here, he made very, very short statements, just admitting to killing various women, admitting that he strangled them, and no other details. We do not have those details. And you may recall from the video that we've been showing in this broadcast here that he made the statements, really no emotion on his face. Some saying he looked more like he was smirking. Some of the victim's family saying specifically, as you read, that it looked like a smirk. To go on with Amanda Funderburg, Melissa Bartholomew's sister's comments, she was saying that she was only 15 when this happened and that it has been traumatic for her ever since. We are totally getting that sense here of the strong emotions. Allow me for a second, too, to add this as well. Rodney Harrison, you know, you and I have been involved in various police cases over decades, and as Kirsten and Dante have been doing, I applaud you for your work here. I've been on this case really for a better part of 2 decades, and we know we've been talking about James Burke, the former police chief. Let's also mention Thomas Spoda, the former district attorney out here. Both of those men indicted and convicted of crimes that are they related to this directly? Not necessarily, but it does underscore their relative lack of interest in pursuing criminality in these cases and not bringing in all law enforcement resources to try and solve this case. So, as Dante and Kirsten have been saying, salute to you and the men and women of the Suffolk County Police Department who were very active in reigniting the urgency of this case and making sure that justice has been served. And today we are seeing the result of that and seeing various family members looking Rex Heuermann straight in the eye and telling them just what impact this has on them. We'll keep you updated, of course, as it continues to unfold.
And James Ford is outside the courthouse. We have our bureau chief, Keith Lopez, who is inside the courthouse, who is sending us the shorthand version of what is being communicated by each of these family members as they take to the podium. 13 of them are speaking on behalf of their loved ones who cannot speak. Rodney Harrison, just to come back into what Amanda Funderburg, who is Melissa Bartholomew's sister, what she was saying, she had a very long statement talking about how she would have been 51 years old, but she will be forever 24. But Amanda saying how she was 15 when this was a really horrifying detail of the case that came out. He used her sister's phone, Melissa's phone, to call and taunt Amanda Funderburg, who was just 15 years old at the time. He told her gruesome details of what he did to her sister. And she has now waited, almost 20 years in order to address him, 30 years, to address him. This is just an incredible moment to be unfolding in the courtroom, Rodney.
So I used a phrase during my opportunity to speak during the initial press conference after we made the arrest of Rex Heuermann. And the statement I said is, Rex Sherman is a demon that walks among us. Uh, that there is a perfect example of why I made that statement. Uh, for him to feel the comfort, the have the mindset, feel the ability to call a family member up and taunt them, just shows you the type of character that he is. And this is why I have so many levels of frustration when it comes to the plea, the accommodations, and a host of other things that he's able to escape around because of the potential of his cooperation going down the road.
You want him to suffer. You want him to suffer the way these victims had to suffer at his hands. I hear your anger.
You can sense it, right? You can sense it.
And I apologize.
No,
I'm
there's
sorry
no
that I'm
apology
showing my
needed.
emotions, and I
We
shouldn't be.
sit
I
side by
shouldn't be,
side
but
with you when we see one human do horrific things to another human just because they can, out of
Empathy.
the
We
depths
should
of
we
their
should have
depravity.
empathy. Empathy
Yes.
is a admirable trait.
well, I appreciate that, but I gotta still remain a professional. But at the
We
end
all
of the day,
do.
just because of the victims, and this is actually there's a positive here. There is a silver lining that there is a little bit of a therapeutic moment being able to look at the killer and tell him how that they feel. Kudos to them for their strength, their resiliency, and being able to get up there and say what they got to say to Rex Sherman.
You know, as
That's
as a criminal
incredible.
defense attorney, I do
Yes.
have to. I'm curious because there's two sides to this. So, yes, there's victim impact statements that are
Right.
being given right now.
Right.
But Rex Heuermann, as a defendant, will have the opportunity to have people speak on his behalf. I'm curious if anyone will get up there and speak on his behalf and say anything positive about
I'm
him.
curious if he will.
Yeah,
I
if,
mean,
if
he
he'll
has
mention, if
the
he'll talk at all.
opportunity to. I'm also curious, as somebody that has, delved into sort of what makes a serial killer. What spawned all of this in Rex Heuermann? I would really love to know more about what happened in his life, or if this is just the way he was made.
You
But
would
I mean,
assume something had to happen, right? I mean, you
so
have to
many of
be
us have
just,
that
yeah.
question. How does somebody do
Some information may
this?
come out from that
Right.
through the sit downs with the FBI. You would hope that they are able to gain knowledge about the why, and what the cause of that was, again, so that they can prevent that moving forward. But clearly, you are a horrible person if you do these things. And if he was born that way or something happened to him to
Right.
kind of spark that and lead him on that path, I think it would be good to know for the purposes of preventing this in the future.
And Rodney, did you come across anything in any of your time as the head of the Suffolk County Police Department that gives you any insight into what creates a monster like this?
No, I not when it comes to this situation. But I'm gonna, if I could put my finger on anything, I'm gonna go with childhood.
Yeah.
Listen, Sandra Castilla, excuse me, went missing when he was 29 years old. And I'm sorry to share this, but 8 bodies have been connected to Rex Sherman. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more. Listen, he was a hunter. You know, him having this gun fetish and a host of other things, it makes you scratch your head. Was there something that his parents, when they raised him, allowed his mind to go off its rails? Potentially.
Well,
But
there
you
are
have to remember, 20, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
But being 29 years old
Yeah.
is young to start committing these acts of violence. And for you to be doing it for 30 years shows you that this is something that's probably been inside of him for a very, very long time.
And we also have to recall he had the other property down south, which is more open, right?
Right.
Easily accessible, more places to hide bodies or something. If in fact there were more victims, so you are curious as to if this is the full count
Right.
of people who he attacked and brutally murdered.
And there are 3 more bodies along Ocean Parkway even. We have, Asian male doe and two others that they're also looking into, which there have not been a connection made at this time. But there are many other unsolved murders around the nation that people are curious if he is responsible for those deaths as well. And I don't know if that's something that the FBI gets out of him or if continued DNA analysis gets anywhere with, but obviously
that may be part of
people
the
are eager to
frustration
know.
that Rodney has because of the way he took the plea. There's even victims here, right? The eighth victim who he didn't officially say
Right.
that he was responsible for, or he didn't officially plead guilty to that count. And it does seem like a bit he was able to limit the scope of responsibility and accountability, and it may not include everybody that he actually impacted.
We are here today for the victims. They are all in court on the day that Rex Heuermann is going to be sentenced. From everything that we know, he is getting 3 life sentences. There's no possibility of parole. He will most certainly die behind bars. But finally, the 8 victims of Rex Heuermann have the opportunity to have their say, to address him directly, to tell him what they think. We are hearing as we go through various victims, and right now I have some of what Elizabeth Meserve, who is an aunt of Megan Waterman, has said this morning. This is our bureau chief, Keith Lopez, is inside the courtroom. This is being recorded for video. It has not yet been released. It'll be released later today. And of course, we're going to bring that to you. But what she said was, you took all of Megan's hopes and dreams. He stole her hopes. I'm sure she fought hard. She's more than a statistic, a headline, or a number in these horrific crimes. We are seeking justice. Today is years of hard work by many people. And Rodney Harrison, I hope you feel this as she says that. Today, we are hoping that this type of evil lives in society will end. It took 7 agonizing months to identify Megan. We spent every day with what happened. The prisoner simply wanted to torture and kill. He's large in stature, reminded of an ogre, but he searched for kiddie porn. He was not a predator, but is a cowardly opportunist. Families demand justice. I am sickened and shocked that Rex's family profited by the monstrous acts by a demon who sits in this courtroom. More to say for his family. The family gets filthy rich off his crimes. Pain continues while third parties profit. These are the words of Elizabeth Meserve, who is the aunt of Megan Waterman, who is a mother. Rodney Harrison, we thank you so much for being here with us today. Your insights have been absolutely invaluable. You've been very generous with your time. The former Suffolk County Police Commissioner, 30-year career at the NYPD. We thank you very much for your service, and we thank you for your time today and bringing so much insight into what's happening.
Appreciate the kind words.
And James Ford, I know that we're continuing to hear from family members out there. Is there anything else that you can share with us as you wait outside for those family members to come to the podium? They'll have yet another opportunity to speak. This is really a time for people to share their thoughts and their remembrances and their love for these women who were mothers, sisters, daughters, cousins. They were somebody, and today we really get to hear them in their families' voices.
Yes, we really do. It's very, very personal. And as you pointed out, we are expecting many of them to come here to the podium after the hearing and just talk further about their loved ones straight from the heart. These statements in the courtroom certainly are also straight from the heart, but they're also written out. So they've had a chance to really compose them and really have this opportunity to address Rex Heuermann straight on. It's worth pointing out Liliana Waterman, who lost her mother. In fact, she was a young child when her mother went missing and never came back. She has just spoken, saying that she was never comforted by her mother after she'd had a bad day that particular day, and that she was a human being And most importantly, says Liliana Waterman, she was my mother. Every milestone has been marked with her absence. She addresses the man who has confessed to these crimes straight to his face. Megan Waterman was her mother, had originally been from Maine, was just 22 years old when she went missing, and her daughter Liliana telling Rex Heuermann that endless conversations over this time that she could have had, she missed out on. She missed out on the benefit of having a mother, and gets to tell him that in court in very emotional terms. Again, though, we will be hearing some of the video testimony from in the courtroom, but when they come out here and talk, that is their opportunity to address everyone, address you in real time about the losses that they've suffered. And it's been a long theme, them saying that Rex Heuermann is a monster, and this is their opportunity to face him and tell him so. Whether or not this has a personal impact on him, we'll get some sense, we hope, once he speaks. That's really the latest as to what's going on the fourth floor in Judge Maisie's courtroom right now.
And
Kirsten.
James Ford, I was also reading through Liliana's statement, and something that just pulled at my heart. She said, "Was this somehow my fault?" And you had said she was just a very young child when her mother, Megan Waterman, was taken from her. And here is this child thinking, did I do something? And that is such an incredibly heavy weight. We're sitting here with legal experts. We had the Suffolk County Police Commissioner who oversaw the investigation and blowing this case wide open and bringing Rex Heuermann to bring him in to face justice. We have Dante Mills, who's here, who's a criminal defense attorney. And James, you and I have covered all manner of court cases and murders and atrocities in our time as journalists in New York City. And yet we're all sitting here as parents and humans feeling the weight of these, victims and their family members having to recount the burden that they have borne all of these years.
Truly. And I'm a defense attorney.
Right.
And I have people that I represent. But what I do get to see is that when a crime is committed, it generally impacts more than that one person that crime is committed against.
The ripples.
The ripple effect of that. And it can be any crime, if it's robbery or assault or something like that. You're taking away from more than just the person that you're interacting with. When you talk about death, that extends out even further, because there are going to be people who their lives are worse because their loved one is missing. And their lives are impacted not only on that day, but if you talk about and really think about this situation where these are people that went missing. They were missing for a while. So you have that concern of where are they? What's happening to them? Are they still alive? Are they being tortured?
Right.
Are they at peace? And then you find out that your loved one has, in fact, been murdered, and you have to wait almost 30 years for justice. So this is a
some
lifetime.
of them waited a decade just to get back literally pieces of their loved ones.
This is a lifetime of trauma, Not a situation where it's a car accident or even someone is shot and you find out and you get to grieve immediately. And you'll never move on when a loved one is taken away from you, but you have a lifetime of trauma of trying to understand what's happening to them, if you'll ever see them again. And like you said, you go years, decades. Things continue to happen, and in your mind, you're thinking, what could I have done different to change the situation?
Right, if I had
Where
done
did
one
I
thing,
mess up?
If I made a phone call, if I just told her, come home.
Absolutely. And people make choices, but humans generally, as I said, are empathetic, and you also want to help in any situation. So you're going through your life, even as, imagine a daughter who wasn't even old enough barely to talk when her mother went missing, thinking that she could have done something different, or she impacted the fact that her mother was taken away from that.
You feel the weight of these statements
It's so
on
heavy.
your heart. It is so heavy. And I so commend Judge Mazzy for allowing these to be recorded and allowing these to be shared, because as I said earlier, and this is going to be a delayed release. It's incredibly unusual to allow cameras in the courtroom in New York State, and to see these victim impact statements. I have to believe that he is hoping that this will have a greater weight than having to see Rex Heuermann's face.
Yes.
And to see, all of the mugshots and the exterior of his house and, all of those pieces, that instead that these stories will become about the loved ones and about the women who were taken from them.
You want him to be forgotten. You absolutely want
And
him
the
to be
victims to be
forgotten. And
remembered.
the victims to be remembered.
Yeah.
And also the service of, I know Rodney, he was here with us earlier, but the service that went into him saying, I'm going to get justice for these people. If not for that, they would have had to carry this the rest of their lives. They wouldn't have the opportunity to get this burden off of them and to push
Right.
some of that onto Rex Heuermann, which he deserves to have the full burden. So thankfully, that investigation, they picked it back up, and we're here today, and these victims' families have the opportunity to kind of unleash and release themselves a bit. And you hope that it helps, because they could have had to go the rest of their lives not knowing.
James, I want to bring you in on this, because this was an interesting sort of turning point in the case when they found the Gilgo 4 along Ocean Parkway in December of 2010. And it sort of came together at the same time that the technology around these burner phones started to shift a little bit, and they had more metadata involved with them, so that they were able to cull a greater amount of information, because Heuermann used these burner phones where you used to be able to go into like a little mom and pop shop and with some cash buy a phone. You could make these phone calls, and he was going to Craigslist to find these sex workers. And all of a sudden, the data got a little bit more on that. They found the Gilgo 4, which were just a few miles away from his house. He kept his victims sort of nearby in that really perverse manner so he could drive by them. But the outpouring of attention that went to this case in that moment. Previously, you had a body found here or a body found there out in the Hamptons or Fire Island or Manorville. And now that you had 4 found together, and the heat became much more intense, and he stopped in that moment. Talk about how the case shifted during that time and kind of what that meant for an end to his activities.
Sure, and in fact, it's worth pointing out, right, that the first 4 women's remains were found after the search had gone for Shannon Gilbert, another sex worker who went missing, and as we've been pointing out in this newscast, Rex Heuermann is not charged with her murder, so that still is officially an open case. And the search had gone for Shannon Gilbert's body, and then led to the 4 first victims of Heuermann being found. And Maureen Brainerd Barnes is well worth noting regarding what you're saying with these burner phones. She had a friend who had been close, a fellow sex worker who'd been close with Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and ended up taking a call from Rex Heuermann on one of these burner phones. I mean, clearly there was a pattern by this man to taunt people close to his victims, to brag about what he'd done, to try and lay a few crumbs, knowing, at least at that time, that he wasn't likely to get found. It's really perverse, and to have an opportunity for the victims' families to talk with him about this so many years later has to be cathartic on some level. That having been said, as we keep pointing out, Keith Lopez, our Long Island bureau chief, is in the courtroom, and he's saying there's no indication that Rex Heuermann is showing any emotion in all this. He is mostly facing forward. At least twice the victims' families have said to him, look at me.
Mm.
Let me tell you how this is impacting me.
And
And
is
in
he
those
doing
rare
that?
cases, he may have glanced, but not staying on it. Yeah, he may have glanced, but from all accounts, he is not staying eyes locked on.
Right.
He is zoned out as far as we can tell overall, and that has got to be frustrating for these families. That having been said, though, this is their opportunity to make their statements in front of him. Does it bring closure? We'll hear from them directly after this hearing.
Right.
Based on what has been said by some of the family members in the past, this brings some sense of closure. But with their loved ones being gone for so long,
No.
that closure only goes so far.
Right. I mean, it's cold comfort. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to be able to have your say, but what you really want is your loved one back. What you really want is for these atrocities to
Right.
never have occurred. And of course, we can't
And you have
undo
to
that.
acknowledge too that I mean, yes, he ended up taking a guilty plea because he believed there was no way for him to win that trial.
Right. I mean,
he
the
didn't take a
evidence
guilty
was
plea because
overwhelming.
he felt guilty.
No.
He never came forward,
No.
you know, in the last 30 years and said, you know what, I
Yeah,
committed
raised his
these.
hand
That,
and
yeah, it was
volunteered.
me.
No.
So you
And he
do
did, and
have to
he
understand
denied.
that.
He denied through his
Absolutely.
attorney that he was the one who committed these murders.
For a long,
until,
yes, and fought that until he, again, the determination was made that they have so much that I'm not going to win this trial, so I might as well see what I can get out of it, see what I can get out of
And
pleading guilty.
also, as we've spoken here before, preserve the familial assets.
Yes.
Because he owned the architectural firm that employed his daughter. His wife, Asa Ellerup, was not working. And they have now chosen to work on a docuseries and give access to the filmers inside their home. And the belief is that many of these murders occurred inside the family home while the family was away, while Asa took her children to visit family on family vacations. That's when he would commit these atrocities, you know, so that he could sort of still, I mean, this is just, you know, conjecture being inside the mind of a serial killer, but so that he could, you know, still be in control of where this all happened. Serial killers are always
and I think,
very much
listen,
into
Ronnie
their
brought up the
control.
point earlier. He said there's no proof one way or
Right.
the other, but questions remain about how meticulous or careful he was, and if he truly was able to keep all of this from his family.
Right.
Were there components that they knew about? Well, you know, even if it wasn't the full extent, were there components or things that were happening around them that if they didn't know what it was, they should have? That should have raised a red flag.
Was there a blind eye that was turned?
Absolutely,
Right,
absolutely.
and
And,
could it
we
have
don't have
saved
answers
lives?
to those questions, but I do think it's interesting that the family is engaging with a production company to profit off of it. And I know that it's something that's a hot ticket item right now, talking about the ability of someone who committed a crime to make money off of that crime. Should it be extended out to their family members or people? I know that sometimes even the perpetrators, their family, they are not aware and they are impacted. But should there be some kind of guardrails or guidelines so that the victims don't feel like
They're being re-victimized?
They're being re-victimized.
Right.
Absolutely. That's the perfect way to say it. You don't
Right.
want that to happen. And is that the case right now, especially when we don't know if there was a blind eye being turned or willingness to look the other way if the
Could there
family
have
saw
been
things
some
that
evidence
happened?
that was brought to law enforcement
Absolutely.
that could have saved lives
Absolutely.
along the way? 8 victims here that we know of so far. This is the day when Rex Heuermann is being sentenced in Suffolk County Court, and it's also a day when his victims' family members are allowed to speak. 13 of them are speaking today. It is all being recorded. It will be released later in the day, and we will continue to bring that to you on Pix 11, as well as Pix 11 Plus here, the streaming. I want to share with you parts of one of those statements. I have a bureau chief inside the courtroom right now, and he is sending us notes as they're sharing their statements. Kim Overstreet is the sister of Amber Costello. Amber Costello was the 7th victim of Rex Heuermann, and here's what she had to say. This was about her sister. I just want to make sure that I get this all lined up correctly. I give testimony of my sister's life to her family taken by a raging murderer. sex addict who is finally facing justice. His unbridled anger caused him to hurt Amber and me. My sister paid the ultimate price, but her sacrifice brings victory to this court. I know her blind faith in Jesus helped her with her physical pain and succumbed to death at Rex's hands wrapped around her neck. May the court rectify Rex's family profiting from his crimes, which, Dante, is what you and I were just speaking of. Also notable, 3 children have chosen to speak today. There are 7 children in all. 5 of these women were mothers. 2 additional sons who are not speaking but are in court. Karen Vergata, they're there to support all of the remaining family members that are there as well. As I just, pardon me, as I go through my notes here, because a lot is coming in we're as we're sitting here with you. I also want to share with you victim Sandra Castilla. Her sister Ruth Ramos is speaking, and she had said today was a deeply meaningful day for Sandra and other victims' families. My hope that someday the person who is fully accountable, my hope is that the person someday who is fully accountable would be held to account, and that day is here, that this brings the families peace and that Rex can harm nobody else. Sandra, her sister, had endless potential. Losing the mother has robbed him of her guidance and love. Never knowing her is irreversible. My heart is with all the families and the children left behind, that they have beautiful memories in honor of their mothers. And again, our bureau chief saying that Rex has no emotion from what he can see, that he is just simply staring straight ahead. James, this is what you has really revealed to us as well, that there has been just absolutely no noticeable reaction as of this moment. James, do you want to jump in here and talk about what the DA is doing in this moment with the sentencing?
Right, and thank you, Kirsten. The DA also noting what you are, that Rex Heuermann appears to have no remorse, appears to not be affected emotionally regarding this. The DA speaking now in Judge Maisie's courtroom on the 4th floor, formally calling for maximum sentence, which would be 3 consecutive life sentences with no parole, followed by 4 consecutive 25-year sentences. Rex Heuermann will certainly not be out of prison ever again. Exactly where, which state penitentiary he'll be sent to is still not known at this point. The judge will determine that. But from the district attorney, Ray Tierney's statement, a lot of material here coming from the courtroom saying just how depraved Rex Heuermann was. In fact, among them, the DA saying there is no doubt that Rex Heuermann is sorry. He is sorry he got caught, the DA says.
Right.
He is saying that Heuermann clearly planned this out, plotted it, and then subsequently taunted families with those burner phones and spent a lot of time online because they have an electronic footprint to follow. He spent a lot of time online researching about his victims after he'd killed them and about their families to try and taunt them and to gratify himself over what he did. The DA really, it seems to me, is trying to give us a sense of what we were not able to get when Max Heuermann pled guilty to these crimes. That was just very boilerplate. He admitted to killing these women and gave no details, but the district attorney making it very clear at this point that Rex Heuermann very much had wanted to do these crimes. They were premeditated, and the method of covering up his crimes, of hiding evidence, of keeping himself out of the path of investigators, that was very thoroughly done, according to the district attorney. For all of those reasons, they're asking for the maximum sentence. And look, this was a plea agreement, so that maximum sentence almost certainly is going to happen. But again, this is an opportunity for the district attorney to spell out just why that maximum sentence has to be done, and to criticize Rex Heuermann for having no remorse, even in the face, literally, in the face of the families of his victims. Kirsten.
You know, one thing that comes up, and we talk about the sentence here, the possibility of
Right.
sentence. You talk about 3 life sentences that could be
Right.
served consecutively.
And 4 25 to life sentences.
4 25-year sentences. And people ask, well, why? If he gets 1 life sentence, what
That's
difference does it
sufficient,
make?
right.
Obviously, it's a life sentence. Well,
Right.
you do that. The reason you do that is because you never know what law may change, what may come up, you know, whether it's an appeal or something else. If one of those life sentences, say, is taken off the table,
Right.
you don't want them to go free, right?
Right.
So you want to make sure that you have those consecutive sentences stacked up as a way to protect against any error that may have occurred in one of the cases or something else. There could be a law that says if someone is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, they no longer have that. You know, they may take that off the table. That would then make this person eligible if they only have 1 life sentence for parole. But if you have a 25-year sentence
Right.
consecutive after that, now they have to start that 25-year sentence after they would be eligible for parole on that life sentence. So that technicality, that's why I expect the judge to give the maximum sentence here. That way it protects the system, the court, and the public from this person, to ensure that no matter what happens legally, no matter what challenges come up, he's to remain in jail for the rest of his life.
Right, which is something I think that everybody agrees
And
to.
if I may jump in for a moment here, because very good points, Mr. Mills. We greatly appreciate your insights on all of this. The district attorney has spoken further and has continued to describe Rex Heuermann as a monster, saying that he used the cell phone from Melissa to call her 15-year-old sister, saying murdering wasn't enough, but torturing her 15-year-old sister. Any person saying those things to a 15-year-old is not good, as Heuermann described himself to probation. Also, and Mr. Mills, I'd love to get your insight on this. I mean, everyone has their day in court. Everyone has a right to representation. That includes Rex Heuermann. So his attorney, Mike Brown, is there in court and has made a statement to the gallery, to the victims' families, saying, quote, "I am sorry for your loss. These were beautiful, beautiful young ladies. Their memories last forever." Then Rex Heuermann, it appears from our bureau chief inside, saying that Rex Heuermann's has stood up in court and saying, "There are no words I can say. The words I can say have no meaning, and I will leave it there." Meanwhile, someone in the gallery tells him to speak louder. You can tell from this back and forth, this is really highly emotional, highly charged. And this really is the last opportunity that the victims' families are going to get to see Rex Heuermann in person, be in the same room with him, talk with him, hear him. So yeah, they want to hear whatever he has to say. And it appears it's only those dozen or so words that he is going to say. Still, he does have legal representation, and there is that apology, if you will, from Heuermann's defense attorney, from him himself.
I can't even imagine,
really
James.
is
I
not an
can't
apology.
imagine
He's
being
saying he has no words to say.
Yeah, being family members in court, and you know they are finally getting their moment to speak to and address this monster that has left a never-ending black hole in their lives. But there's such words of cowardice. I have no words.
Yeah, it's cowardice.
Really, you had words for your victim's teenage sister when you were taunting her, when you were in control, when you were in charge. To now say, as a coward, I have no words.
And we talked earlier, but we asked, we were curious as to if anyone was going to speak on his behalf, if he would speak on his behalf. Kirsten, was your question, and we now have an answer that he's too afraid to do so. He's too afraid to address the victims of the people,
Right.
The lives he took, their families, to do so. I will say though, and James made a good point, even about him having the right to a defense attorney. I know Michael Brown; he's a good person, he's a good attorney. I'm asked all the time, as a defense attorney, how can you represent someone
somebody like that?
like that?
Right.
The-
I mean, and
and
everybody's entitled to a defense.
It is, and that's
are.
the true answer. I believe in our system. I know Michael Brown believes in our system. That means, as attorneys, our job is to make sure that, as bad of a person Rex Heuermann is, that he's treated fairly in this process.
Right.
If a T is supposed to be crossed, it should be crossed. Our job is to make sure that's done.
Right.
We're not passing a
Prosecution has
judgment
to
on
do their
anyone else.
job.
Prosecution has to do their job.
Law enforcement has
Our
to do
job
their
is to
job.
make sure the
Right.
system works. He gets the rights that he's entitled to, because if he doesn't, if he doesn't get those rights, then maybe the verdict is, the sentence is overturned or something like that. So all of these pieces of the system have to work together. So Michael Brown is there representing him. It's interesting that he did essentially apologize on his behalf. He highlighted the beauty of the lives that were taken, and those women who lost their lives, which I think was admirable to do. But he is there as an attorney in a system that provides or gives everybody
Correct.
the right to a criminal defense
no matter
attorney.
how despicable we think they are. And
Yes.
speaking of this has just come down from our bureau chief. This is just incredible. The judge has spoken as well in these final moments, and he said, I know you're sorry you got caught. Are you a little sorry for what you did to those women who you strangled to death? At least 8 of whom we know. At least, are you sorry for that? And Rex Heuermann said, yes, I am. And the
Wow.
judge went on to say, you have been described as a large man, but you are a despicable small man. You are a coward. Spend the rest of your life without parole. All run consecutive. Get him out of here. And the courtroom erupted in applause.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even we talked about earlier with Rodney, where he said he was getting emotional, but he wanted to remain professional. It's the same thing with this judge. You see these facts, and you know this person deserves to be in jail the rest of their life. They don't
deserve more than that.
Yes, they don't deserve the sympathy of a drawn-out process, or even making it seem as if this judge considered anything else other than consecutive life sentences in every possible penalty that he could get. And I'm glad the judge handled it that way. Emotion crept in, which you try to remain professional, especially as a judge. But we're human, right? And I think sometimes you have to make a statement, and making a statement of, I was going to punish you as much as I possibly could, was right for this moment.
It's just incredible. James, now you're right at the forefront there in front of the courthouse. We are now expecting these family members who have testified to their loved ones' lives to come outside, and they have the opportunity to speak again, to answer questions from the media. This has garnered international media attention. Can you please set the scene for us?
Sure. We are already starting. I'll get out of the shot here for a moment. We're already starting to see some of the people who'd been either in the courtroom or in the overflow room start to come out. So this hearing is over. I mean, you read the judge's statement, quote, get him out of here. It is not specifically known which state penitentiary Rex Heuermann will end up being taken to, but we know this much. He will stay behind bars for the rest of his life. We are beginning to see people filter out. Once we start having the family members of victims who did speak in court emerge, we'll start hearing from them over here at the podium that is set up. This is all, we're all waiting for it. In addition to that, Dante Mills had talked about how Mike Brown, the defense attorney, had made a statement essentially apologizing to the victims' families. We are likely to hear from him as well, based on our time when we were here before, when Heuermann pled guilty. And look at the faces of people. Yeah, this clearly a lot of emotion has been gone through. A lot has been heard. A lot of difficult statements made. And we can also say that as Heuermann was being let out, various family members started shouting at him, saying that justice is being served. One off-color commented, "You can't blame families," wishing that he ends up being treated in prison the way he treated his victims. Yeah, there is quite a lot of emotion here, and it's certainly understandable in this moment where the man who has admitted to killing, having 8 victims and killing them, gets sentenced. And as the judge pointed out, Judge Mazie, that it's 8 that we know of. He himself, the judge, saying that there may be additional cases that Heuermann is connected to, and whether or not we will get that information from the FBI unit that Heuermann has agreed to talk with, only time will tell. That unit has gotten quite a lot of information into the minds of a serial killer, and this serial killer might add to that body of knowledge. But we're waiting. To my knowledge, everyone who's come out so far has been in the overflow room that's up on the 4th floor. People actually in the courtroom, that's going to take a little while longer for them to filter out, but we're certainly expecting them to do so, and certainly expecting them to have their day to speak to the world, in addition to their day of speaking in court on the record.
And I would,
we'll stay right on it up to
James,
the
I would
minute, of
also
course.
imagine these
Back to you,
people
Kirsten.
are part of a very unfortunate sorority.
Yeah.
Right? They're all survivors of these women, decades with these words, running through their heads and their hearts and their souls. And, to get out of that courtroom and maybe just have a moment with these other people that they will forever be bound to, that they never knew but will forever be tied to.
And we all have different beliefs, but I will say this. I would hope that if these victims could look down, right, in the afterlife, just look down and know that they were loved. There were 2 full courtrooms of people who cared enough about them to show up 30 years later, and show how hurt they were that they're not in their lives anymore. So you would just hope that somewhere,
and that people never gave up.
They never gave up. They never forgot about them.
Law enforcement didn't give up.
Yes.
The public didn't give up. The interest around this case has been tremendous. I keep hearing, I go back to the former police commissioner who was there when this investigation was ongoing, James Burke. He said, don't come and tell me about another dead hooker buried on one of my beaches. And you know what? The world came back and said, we want to hear more. And we want to find out who's responsible. Who did this? Bring him to justice.
And the anger that's being the emotion that's in these statements, that's all because of love, because of the love they have for these victims, because of the impact that these victims had on their life, the humanity. Yes.
Yeah.
So I just hope that somewhere or some way they can feel that they are missed, right? They are loved, and people still care about them and think about them and wish they could hug them and have another conversation with them.
Certainly, these are, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunts, cousins that spoke, but most poignantly, children.
Yes.
3 children spoke, 2 more were in the courtroom. There were 7 children in all. 5 of these women were mothers and, had so much taken from so many lives at that level.
But the world now knows who they are and how special they are, because their families had the opportunity to express that.
James, let's go back out to you because I know you've begun to see some people exiting these courtrooms. They've got to come down. There's a logistical process getting out of the 2 courtrooms, which were standing room only, as you had indicated. And they have to come down from the 4th floor. There's a podium set up with microphones from media around New York and the country and the world wanting to hear more from people as they exit and their thoughts on how the proceedings went today.
Sure, and thank you, Kirsten. You know, John Ray, an attorney who represents Shannon Gilbert's family, was in court, certainly, and certainly has had an extensive relationship with the various families of victims. John Ray joins us now. Thank you for doing so. First of all, just your reaction to what you heard in court today. All those victims making statements straight to Rex Heuermann. Your reaction, sir?
Those victims expressed something from inside themselves that I'd never heard before in all the victim statements I've ever experienced. And what they said certainly has and should have its collective effect upon the public. There's also the problem of Heuermann. All those words, whether taken separately or together, really had no effect upon that beast who sat there. As he himself said, words are useless here. He's right for him because he doesn't care about words at all. He only cares about Rex Heuermann. And so it is.
And how emotional would you describe the situation in court, and how did it affect you emotionally listening to it?
Well, how does one describe real emotions? Although you could, in the atmosphere, but rather that your interest was taken by an emotional thing, rather than as in court by a fact or a piece of evidence, and it's had certainly that much more of an impact upon. I could see it on the crowd, upon myself as well. Well, the words spoke for themselves, I suppose, could say.
John Ray, attorney for the Shannon Gilbert family, we greatly appreciate you talking with us. That gives you a really strong sense from someone who's just emerged from court on the fourth floor. And look, he's known the family members of all of the victims for years at this point. So that gives some insight there. But when we hear from them directly, that much more impactful for the world, for us listening, as you heard from him and from the judge. This apparently has not had such an impact on Rex Heuermann himself. That having been said, though, this has been their moment to get some sense of closure. How much they have gotten, we'll hear further from them when they take to the podium here and when we hear the actual in-court testimony from them that has been recorded. We'll keep you updated, of course, up to the minute. Kirsten, back to you.
Yeah, James, just to piggyback off of you having John Ray there, really impactful. We've been talking about how there is this community of people who just never gave up on their loved ones, whether it was the family members themselves aching to have closure for what happened to their loved ones, aching to know how this happened and who perpetrated it. Also, there was this incredible confluence of events where Shannon Gilbert, another sex worker, went missing in Suffolk County, and this family attorney, John Ray, had been advocating for so much justice on her behalf. And, it was because she went missing that we ended up seeing more activity around that area. It was a police officer that was training his police dog along Ocean Parkway that discovered the first of the 4 bodies. But Shannon Gilbert went missing in that same area. So bring that piece of the puzzle in, because that has been just another, incredible coincidence, but also community that led to more eyes on this investigation, and the fact that nobody was dropping this investigation, even when the Suffolk County Police Commissioner and the district attorney were obstructing justice and colluding to try to make sure nobody ever found out what happened to these women.
Yeah, well worth pointing out that there was tireless work being done that had been really foiled by the top law enforcers of Suffolk County. Yet the rank and file had stayed on this. They'd
Right.
stayed dogged and did all that they could to make sure that some justice had been done. But it really ended up being justice delayed. Delayed, that is, until now. With Rex Heuermann getting the maximum sentence as agreed to in the guilty plea. But again, just how strong that can satisfy the families of the victims, we'll hear from them shortly. Based on their comments in the courtroom, there is some sense of gratification and closure, but it is very limited, certainly. One more, let's talk a little bit more about what we've got going on here. You can see there's law enforcement from out from the court coming out. What we anticipate is the various family members to be ushered out by them, to walk past them and then speak. Also, here to our left, you can see some of the sex workers who've been talking, saying that Rex Heuermann has been described as a client in these cases, and that no, they say we know clients. They don't necessarily come to carry out killings. And they say that is exactly was the case with Rex Heuermann, and that he should always be described simply as a murderer and not as a client, and other negative terms. You heard John Ray there describe him as a monster. In fact, you heard the district attorney. You heard the testimony from the district attorney calling Rex Heuermann a monster. These are the terms that sex workers say they want him to be known by only, and not as a client. And various members of media from around the world here now gathering, waiting for those victims' families to come out to make further comment to the world, so we can hear from them directly and get an even stronger sense of how this proceeding went and how they are feeling in the aftermath of having addressed the man they call a monster to his face and the effect of that. So we are right now waiting for all of that, which should happen any moment. And of course, we will bring it to you as soon as it does.
Yeah, and James, just to set the scene for anybody who may have joined us a little bit later in the stream, I'm Kirsten Cole. I'm here with Dante Mills, James Ford, correspondent for Pix 11 News at the Riverhead Courthouse, where Rex Heuermann, the now convicted Long Island serial killer, has been sentenced today. 3 consecutive life sentences, 4 sentences, 25 years to life. 13 of the family members of these 8 female victims have spoken today. 5 of them are mothers. Their 3 children have come forward. 3 out of the 7 children that they had come forward and spoken. Each of them had up to 10 minutes to share what is known as a victim impact statement. This is so that there can be some sort of a cathartic moment, some acknowledgement that the victims matter in this whole legal proceeding, which always revolves around the perpetrator of the crime. But really notable, because in addition to these 13 having their say, the district attorney also was able to share his words. The judge sharing his, asking specifically of Rex Heuermann, are you at least a little sorry for strangling these women to death? To which Rex Heuermann answered, yes, I am. And the judge saying, you're described as a large man, but you are a despicable small man. You are a coward. These are strong words that we do not often hear in legal proceedings like this. Very often, it's sort of just the facts and going through the process. But the fact that Judge Timothy Mazzei, the district attorney in this, is also Newton Ray Tierney, talking about this and sharing his personal thoughts and feelings about this, talks about how deeply this has, left a mark on the souls of people who have been involved in this case.
Absolutely. And we heard, like you said, we heard some words that we normally would not hear in a court proceeding.
Right.
And it's interesting to pay attention to what you hear, but also what you don't hear, because as a criminal defense attorney, most times in sentencing, I'm focusing on redemption for my client. You did not hear not one single person mention an opportunity for redemption or any kind of redemption. There's no way that he can come back from these kind of atrocities. I don't think anyone had in their mind that there's a way that he can make his stance, his standing better in society. There is no way.
Right.
I think what he's done is unforgivable. That's why the judge used those kind of words and gave him the highest sentence possible, because there's just no coming back from that. And I think there's an acknowledgement there, because even we talked about Michael Brown as his attorney. Michael Brown apologized to the families, acknowledged the beauty of the victims, but did not at any point mention that there should be any grace or redemption or anything given to Rex Heuermann. And I think that was appropriate, because there shouldn't be. It's just unforgivable, these crimes, and I think it was right to have him sentenced to the maximum amount possible. One other thing, just to go back, you mentioned before about the police dog that was training on the beach, and that
Right.
kind of opened this up.
Right.
It's interesting how sometimes you just need a little bit of luck, right? This was a cold case. It had been going on
Right.
for a long time. Sometimes you do need that luck, but thankfully, once that lucky break happened, the people were there to pick up that mantle, to pick up that circumstance and run with it to get us to this end result, where we have finality today. We have justice being served today, and we have the opportunities for the victims and the victims' families to kind of unburden themselves a bit here in court.
There were 130 minutes that were put aside for those family members, 10 minutes each for 13 of the family members to speak, to be able to finally bring their loved ones back to life and to share with them the pieces of their loved ones that were so important, that needed to be celebrated, that needed to be honored. There needed to be some grace shown to these women who had everything taken from them, and to these family members who've had everything taken from them.
And had to carry that for a very long time without just not knowing if you'll ever know what happened to my mom. I may never know what happened to my sister, to my daughter. I may never know. So for them to be in a place now where they know,
Right.
they have that comfort. It won't bring complete peace, but you have that comfort of knowing. And now you can kind of move on with life and decide how you want to grieve, because you know what happened, you know who did it, and you know the person who committed that crime will never see the light of day again. They will never walk the streets. They'll never be in a position to hurt anyone else in the public. You have that comfort, and you can decide now how you want to handle that grief.
And what is so interesting is it's Rex Heuermann's sentencing day, but this has really been focused extensively on the families. The judge really crafted this in a way that really honored
Yes.
each of the 8 victims and their family members who've been left behind, by allowing cameras in the courtroom, which is not allowed in New York State. It can
Doesn't
be
happen. And
yeah.
I've asked for cameras to
So,
be on some of my
Dante,
cases.
you
was
and me
told
both.
no.
You and me both. I have pleaded my case in front of judges and been told I should have been a lawyer, but gotten no camera. But the reason that they're doing this is they want these words saved. And they want them memorialized, and they want them shared, so that this becomes the larger part of the story, the greater part of the story. So the more that we magnify the victims in these cases, the more that we share what we know about the women who had their lives taken by Rex Heuermann, the more we minimize the man who did this.
I think
to
that's
them.
the right direction. And we
Yeah.
see this happening even with, mass shootings and things like that, where they're not releasing or trying not to release more and more information about the perpetrator or the shooter or the
Not even
the-
there are
and
many
trying not
times
to
when
say
we
their
don't
names.
say their names.
Absolutely.
Because we want to say the names of the victims, because
Yes.
those are the ones that are important, and we don't want to give glory to the person that has committed the atrocity.
So I think this is a good, we talked about earlier about the impact this case has had on the legal system,
Right.
including now allowing that hair DNA. This was the first to do that here in New York.
And
but
it was very specific because there was no root to the hair.
yes.
Which is, I mean, we really sort of start to get into the minutia on this, and we're talking about evidence that was, coming up on 30 years old, preserved.
It was
even-
preserved, thankfully. It was preserved. So you had
Yeah.
that chain of custody, which is what went into the analysis of whether it should be allowed in or not. But it really broke this case open. So this case is having bigger impact. These victims are having bigger impact and maybe saving lives themselves. One, because of that DNA now that's being used, but also two, now maybe other judges may see the way that this judge handled this sentencing and say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that if someone is convicted of this type of a case, we highlight the victims. We allowed their families to have this opportunity. We turned the attention to the beauty of the people that were taken away, as opposed to allowing the perpetrator to shine in that moment and have that spotlight on them that maybe they were looking for anyway when they committed these crimes to a certain degree. You don't want them to have the opportunity to get that. You want to focus the attention, especially in this sentencing, which this judge did, and I think in a very graceful and wonderful way, on the victims and allowing their families to highlight how beautiful they were.
And we're going to be hearing directly from those family members because the statements have been recorded. They're going to be shared with us. It looks like we're working on getting our picture back, and we've gotten it back outside the courtroom. Our correspondent, James Ford, is there. Keith Lopez, who is our bureau chief, he has been painstakingly and meticulously sharing the statements as they have come down in real time. And then the district attorney will be releasing the videotape of these statements so that we can hear directly from them. And what we're waiting for now is more victims and their family members to come to the podium. There's been a podium set up. This has a tremendous amount of media attention, not only here in New York State where the murders occurred, but also across the country and really internationally across the world. We see media from all across has been gathered in the variety of proceedings that have happened out at this Riverhead courthouse. So we're waiting for those people to approach the podium so that we can hear more from them directly. James Ford is out there efforting that for us as well, and we will continue to work to bring you all the facets of this as we wait for the district attorney to turn around these victim statements.
One thing that, again, we keep talking about things that we're curious about. I'm curious to see if the Heuermann family, if they give a statement. I know that the last time when he changed his plea, they really gave a brief statement and it seemingly reserved their comments for what they were producing. Will they do the same thing here? Will they come out and give a statement, talk about the impact to these families, talk about the impact that it had on their loved ones and acknowledge the importance of that and apologize to those families? Or will they hold their comments, presumably for something that's being produced? And that leads us back to the conversation that Son of Sam law with the family profiting off of this crime. And should that be allowed? And are they going to just ignore the moment that we're in right now so that they can hold some comments for something to be released a little bit later?
Asa Ellerup, when she was here at the last court proceeding, when Rex Heuermann took accountability for 8 of those murders, she had said at the time that, these would be the last of her comments. And she did say through her attorney again that she would not be there today. She wanted all of the focus to be on the victims and their families, for them to have their time to be able to talk about their loved ones. So that would be Asa, her daughter and son have chosen not to be in attendance. Asa is now the ex-wife of Rex Heuermann. She filed for that divorce and very quickly after he was apprehended and charged for those murders, and the divorce wrapped up very quickly by New York State standards, and all of the assets, the familial assets, were transferred to her because that's something that we would go through very quickly in a capital murder case. But let's take a listen into the podium. If we can pull up that audio, we want to go ahead and do that.
Everything that needed to be said was said. Again, all credit and admiration and inspiration goes to those victims' family members. Very tough act to follow when I got up in court. They really said everything that needed to be said. And they're not that's not what they do for a living. They spoke from the heart. Incredibly affecting. It was affecting to me. And it was really, they're what this case is about. They're why, after 30 years of doing this, I'm an optimist by nature, because I don't dwell on what defendants do. I dwell how victims act, how they coalesce together, how they jealously protect the ones they left behind, how they look out for each other, and how they overcome. And I just want to say, I want to say one thing to the victims, if I could. I want them to wreak their revenge by going on and having great lives, by being happy, by being fulfilled, by being satisfied that they stood by their loved ones and did a wonderful job. And now it's time for them to heal and to go on and realize the tremendous potential that they all have, because they're absolutely extraordinary people. So that's my greatest wish for this case, is that the victims continue their journey, continue to heal, and go on and live the lives that they all deserve. Before I turn it over, I just want to thank the task force. We've got some of our FBI. I've thanked so many people, and I know I've thanked these individuals, but this is the first time they're here. So we have Special Agent Eric Perry. He's around here somewhere. We have former FBI Special Agent Mike Saybrook. They're phone experts. They've helped us in this case. They're here, and I just so many people had a hand in this. So I wanted to especially acknowledge them and their contribution to this case. And again, I could go on and thank people, but I've done that before. So I'm glad we've been trying to get them here to court, but they're busy working on other things and other cases. So they're not based in New York. So for them to come out, really thankful to them, and I look forward to having them meet the victims later. Does anybody have any questions?
Say what Rex Heuermann said. We couldn't quite hear it. What do you think about what he said?
I don't care what he says. I said that before. It doesn't matter what he says. What matters is what he did and what he said before he got caught. And as the victim so eloquently detailed, he didn't have very many good or nice things to do or say before he got caught. I do believe he said something to the effect of, he acknowledged, I don't know. I'll let the record reflect what he said, because I don't really remember what it was.
The attorney, have we passed the era where serial killers can get away with it for as long as they have, given the changes that have taken place in technology and things like that?
Well, I wish that were true. I think it's gotten more difficult. But I've been beating this drum, and I'm going to beat it one more time. The contribution or the lesson that we should learn from this, that this wasn't one person. This isn't like, and I think sometimes the media likes a simple story, so they're like, oh, it was this piece of evidence or this person. That's not what solved this case. What solved this case was, I just mentioned two individuals, highly talented investigators. One of a legion of really talented investigators in this case from a whole bunch of different agencies. They came together. And they have to work through the district attorney's office. And I don't say that because I'm a district attorney. I say that because I know what the district attorney or what any prosecutor's office has, which is the power of subpoena, power to issue search warrants, power to call a grand jury. So you bring all of those talented people, you gather all that evidence, and you put it into a grand jury investigation, and you get results. So I think that's what we need to get from this. But hopefully we could work towards what you're suggesting, but I don't think we're quite there. But we've certainly getting there, and it's getting more and more difficult because, as we see in our digital and forensic world, there's a footprint that's left behind. We just have to be able to find it.
Ray, is this over? Is this case done?
Well, this particular case, this indictment's done. Work is never over. We mentioned some other victims, in the courtroom today, and Suffolk County is a large metropolitan area, 1.5 million people. So we've got almost fell in my lap. We've got a lot of work to do on other cases. We're going to continue to work on those cases. The nice thing about this is all the talented people and all the resources we could dedicate it to those other cases.
Do you believe that Rex Heuermann may have murdered other people? What she pleaded guilty to an admitted here in Suffolk County.
You know, I think the poor people that have been around and I've tortured, they know what I'm going to say. I said, it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what I believe. I'm not going to talk about what I think because it's irrelevant. And I think again, we need to learn lessons. A lot of prosecutors are very free talking about what they think.
Do you have evidence suggesting?
If I had evidence, I put it into a grand jury and an indictment, and then we come and talk about it. Till I have that, I'm not going to talk about it. I respect. I know I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I respect the question, but that's just the way it has to work for it to work.
Amanda, can you comment? You're the one that made him look at you. You made eye-to-eye contact. Can you just comment about how you felt when you got these words out? That's been brewing for years. Can you just step up where Mr. Tierney is, please?
You want to?
Just very quickly.
If you want.
Just slide over.
Yeah.
No, she knows how to walk. We're just trying to figure out if she wants to do it. You want to do it?
And any other family members who want to
Please.
speak?
You just.
It's up to you. Well, she's going to think about it. So why don't we just, if anybody's any more questions for me, we'll turn it over. And I want to thank Ms. Alred for her assistance in this case. And I'm sure some of the victims and Ms. Alred are going to speak, which is great. And if anyone wants to speak, obviously they will, but we'll leave that up to them.
What's happening with
When is
Agent
he
Doe?
leaving? Where is he going? Tell us about that.
Well, I heard he's going quick. And as I said, Suffolk wants to be rid of him. And so he's going to be going quick. I think he's going to be going by the end of this week.
Where will he?
I don't know. I don't know if he's already been designated. Sometimes he goes straight to the facility. Sometimes he goes to like an interim facility where he's designated. But that's a state Department of Corrections situation.
Like Agent Doe. What's going on with Agent Doe? Right.
on Medford Jane Doe?
No.
No.
And if there is, it'll be a subject of a separate press conference.
Agent
Thank
Doe?
you.
Agent Doe. What's going on? With Agent
Same thing. Obviously, the big thing that we want, or that we're looking for with Agent Doe is ascertaining, getting that individual's name back, finding out who that person is. And once we do that, it'll give him some dignity and also give us some investigative leads. So we're still working that genetic genealogy, investigative genetic genealogy. I think we're going to go into the city and make some inquiry into the city again, and so hopefully that'll bear some fruit.
What's the next step if his DNA goes into CODIS?
So, sure, I'm sorry. So as I think we've been talking about all along, case to case, we could compare DNA samples in this case with other investigative samples of other investigations. We've been doing that on a case to case basis. But once this conviction has occurred, that DNA protocol will go to the FBI, and then they'll upload it in CODIS, and then. Sure, I'm sorry. So as I think we've been talking about all along, case to case, we could compare DNA samples in this case with other investigative samples of other investigations. We've been doing that on a case to case basis. But once this conviction has occurred, that DNA protocol will go to the FBI, and then they'll upload it in CODIS, and then it'll be in the CODIS system, and it'll be searchable throughout the country. So that'll happen imminently.
You said you were going to be vertical initial threats. I remember when you were arrested, you said that ADP had stolen that kind of pattern with contacting.
I do think that, well, I do hope, I guess I should say, that the FBI will gain insight into this individual for the sake of the FBI, of course, and for the rest of us in law enforcement and across the country.
So the phones that you use on the victims, you haven't recovered those?
I'm sorry.
Burner phones that had like one dedicated victim.
Yes. So those were disposed of after the commission. That's the purpose of the burner phones. Shortly before the commission of the murders, they were used to lure the victims, and then once the crime was completed, they were disposed of because obviously, if found, they would link the defendant to the commission of the crime. So he got rid of them.
And when you guys
But we got obviously we got the phone records.
when you arrested him, he had other burner phones on him.
Yeah. So.
Not victims. Burner phones that had like one dedicated victim.
Yes, so those were disposed of after the commission. That's the purpose of the burner phones. Shortly before the commission of the murders, they were used to lure the victims, and then once the crime was completed, they were disposed of because obviously, if found, they would link the defendant to the commission of the crime. So he got rid of them.
And when you guys
But we got obviously we got the phone records.
when you arrested him, he had other burner phones on him.
Yeah, so we were able to trace his burner phone usage back to around 2007, and then we were so we started from 2007, we worked our way forwards, and we linked him to burner phone usage all the way up to the time of his arrest. At the time of his arrest, we found one of the burner phones he was using, the physical phone, in his pocket, and another one was found at his at the location of his business.
Have you been able to trace how he met some leader?
We have information with regard to that. The evidence shows that he met her in the city.
And the same with Karen, forgot it?
Yes.
Can you just elaborate more on what you said in court about him continuing to manipulate his family and sort of enriching himself through them still?
I think it's pretty obvious, right? So I think it speaks for itself, and I think that through the trickle of information, he's tried to give a kind of somebody's breaking into a car. That's against the law.
Look at him.
We have a lot of investigators here. Somebody go do something about that. He's by sort of the trickle of information that came out, I think he kind of tried to sanitize the information about this case. I think that the victims gave the unvarnished information and truth about what this defendant is, what he did, and the effect it had. So, I was so pleased and inspired and proud of the victims because they really gave a great accounting for themselves, for their family members, and it was that, again, that's what this case is about. This is why we care about these cases first and foremost, because, everyone in life, to a certain extent, is two-dimensional, portrayed two-dimensional, but there's much more nuance to things. The family members knew the victims better than anyone, and they really, better than anyone, were able to really tell you what those women were about, and really inspirational and effective and important. So happy to have been a part of that. That's it.
Any comments about how it all ended and the judge's comments?
I think it was appropriate. Again, I should say about the judge. I've never worked with Judge Mazie before as a judge, so I was a little apprehensive. I didn't know how it was going to go, as you always are whenever you work a case. Very strict, no-nonsense judge, as you saw. Really, but given the complex nature of the case, the volume of the case, really handled the case well. Really challenged both myself and the defense. And just really grateful for all the courtesies that he gave both sides and the job he did. Both him and his staff and the court officers and everyone really did a great job. So proud of the professionalism here in Suffolk County. And the defense, they were great too in the sense that when you have a case like this, there were a lot of opportunities for them to complain about discovery, and we got together and we communicated. We said, listen, you can complain all you want to the judge about discovery, or we can work together and we can make this thing flow, and we can help you to have this stuff make sense, and that's what they did. So there wasn't a lot of issues that, unless there needed to be issues, there weren't issues. So grateful to them as well. That's it. Awesome. Thank you. We'll turn that over.
Maybe. Can you step in the middle of the mic back? Gloria, step to your right, please. A little more. A little more. Yes.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you very much. That's good. Thank you. And then you're going to report all of you, the most important people here. Okay. I'm Attorney Gloria Allred, and I will identify the individuals who are
Right now, you're looking at the press conference that's being held outside the Riverhead Suffolk County Courthouse.
Today,
where
many
Heuermann
of my
has just been
clients
sentenced.
who are
At the
family
podium now
members
is
of
Gloria
murder
Allred, who
victims
has
in
been
this
a
case
longtime attorney
provided their
for
victim
women
impact
and
statements
for
in court.
victims. Let's listen as she speaks.
Missy Khan, also known as Missy, spoke about the impact of the loss of her sister, Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Nicolette Brainerd Barnes, where are you, Nikki? Right here. Nicolette read her statement describing how the loss of her mother, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, has affected her life. Dylan Hagen read his statement and discussed the loss of his mother, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, when he was just, an infant? 1 year old. Elizabeth Rizzo spoke powerfully about the impact of the loss of her niece, Megan Waterman, and how it changed her life. Liliana Waterman spoke about her beloved mother, Megan Waterman, when Liliana was only 3 years old. Jasmine Robinson spoke about the loss of her cousin, Jessica Taylor, and how much she missed Jessica. It took a great deal of courage for all of these family members to reach down inside of themselves and then write their statements for the court. As they spoke, we could hear and we could feel their pain and their love and the bond that they had with their murdered family members. The defendant's daughter, Victoria Heuermann, stated in a documentary that she asked her father if he ever saw the women that he murdered as somebody's daughter. She then stated, quote, "He told me, didn't even see them as human," end quote. As a women's rights attorney for 50 years, I believe that when women are not seen as human, but instead are seen as sexual objects, they are then vulnerable to being raped, tortured, and murdered. We all need to do more to elevate the status of women and to teach that women and girls need to be respected and valued as human beings and treated as equals. Otherwise, all of our daughters remain at risk by those who do not see them as human. Women should be entitled to the respect, dignity, and rights that everyone should have the right to enjoy. Today, the family members of the murder victims painted a true portrait of their loved ones in a way that only family members can do. They described them as important and often essential members of their family who loved and were loved by their families and who contributed in a significant manner to the lives of their families, often financially, emotionally, and physically, by hugging and kissing their children and other members of their family and sacrificing for them. They were not just human. They were good, caring people who mattered to their family and friends and to their communities. All had hopes for a better life for their children, for themselves, and for their family members. All of my clients who spoke today honored their loved ones' lives. The defendant will never be able to say that he honored his family, because he only brought shame upon them. As a condition of the defendant's plea and conviction to the murders, the defendant must cooperate with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. They will learn a great deal about the defendant and how and why a serial murderer commits these heinous criminal acts and inflicts the ultimate crime, murder of vulnerable women. On behalf of many of my clients, the family members, I call on the FBI to share what they learned with any of the family members of the victims who wish to know why the defendant did what he did to their loved ones. Finally, I also wish to thank the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office for agreeing to discuss any evidence against the defendant with family members if they wish to learn what else might have been presented at trial against the defendant. The family members who spoke today or came to court and did not speak will always remember what happened here. It is my hope that what they will remember is that the defendant was sentenced to the maximum term in prison for the crimes that he committed, because New York State does not have a death penalty. I also hope they'll remember and respect the fact that so many family members have persisted for decades until they could finally win justice for their lost loved ones. Their leadership, their persistence, their courage, and their refusal to allow their loved ones to be forgotten is an example to us all. Their refusal to suffer in silence inspired law enforcement to persevere over so many years to find the evidence and apprehend the defendant, which led to the consequences that were imposed on the defendant today. I am very proud to have represented these brave family members who have done such honor to their loved ones by never giving up and making sure that their voices were heard. They have been an inspiration to me and to so many others who now understand that they too have the power to fight to win justice for their loved ones, for themselves, their families, their friends, and their community. And if anyone would like to say anything, they may. They have become the change. Say anything? They wish to see. Okay, do you want to stand over there? Nicolette.
I just want to say that having been given the opportunity to say what I said today, I feel a lot lighter and I have hope for healing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you want to stand up there?
Elizabeth Missouri, the aunt of Megan Waterman, and I just want to repeat one part of my statement. This is your opportunity to stand with victims' families and support the meaningful advancement of Bill 86730. So future families do not have to endure the same pain and indignity that we have and countless victims before us have suffered.
What did you think of the Peacock documentary?
Disgusting. Disgusting that they made millions of dollars. It's just disgusting. It should never happen again.
Elizabeth, he seemed remorseless. Did confronting him in court bring you any comfort at all?
It didn't change me at all, no. No.
Just move that. Yeah, thank you.
You want to stand on this?
Pass the bill, I'll feel some comfort.
I just want to thank everyone who spent time on this case, listening to our voices and giving my mom and all these other ladies a chance to have their voices heard. This has been a long day coming, and from this day forward, stop saying his name, stop putting his face everywhere. Put the girl's face, put their names, and make it known that we are the ones who live on for them. Rex will never matter, and he is nothing to us, and it should be nothing to any of you. That's all.
One second.
Can we just have her answer the
What'd you say,
question?
sir?
He seemed so remorseless. What did it mean to you to be able to confront him in court? Did it bring any comfort?
I wouldn't say comfort, but it's a day that I've been thinking of my whole life. The chance to finally speak up for her, it gives me comfort for her, knowing she can finally lay down, rest in peace, and he can't hurt anybody else. That's what brings me comfort, not him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming, and I'm going to go down now with Elizabeth and Lillian and Nikki and Dylan, and everyone's going to hear me say,
And thank you so much for being with us today as we have been part of the live streaming of the sentencing of Rex Heuermann, the final time that we will see him in a New York courtroom, sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences, 4 sentences of 25-year to life. With me today has been Dante Mills, criminal defense attorney. Thank you so much for being here and providing all of your valuable insight. I appreciate your time. Also, we had the former Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, James Ford, our correspondent, and remotely via information, Keith Lopez. My thanks goes to him, our bureau chief on Long Island, sending us all of the information from the statements as those have been read off by these victims and their family members inside the Suffolk County Courthouse courtroom today. And I thank all of you, our viewers. You've been sticking with us. I know we had some audio problems along the way, and I certainly appreciate you standing by us as we continue to try to bring you as much of this as we possibly could in this particular venue. We appreciate having you here today. I am Kirsten Cole. I have been your host today, and I look forward to seeing you back on the air here live tomorrow morning on Pix 11. And also, we are going to have much more coverage on Pix 11 News at 4, 5, 6, and 10 p.m. this evening. Thank you so much for being here.